I greet you all and welcome you to the Manifested e-learning platform. Today we are going to study the Governance and Compliance Audit Standards by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Governance and Compliance Audit Standards by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Now, the Institute of Certified Secretaries of Kenya plays a pivotal role in shaping governance and compliance standards, particularly for governance audits. And while the Institute does not issue universally binding international standards, particularly for governance, while it does not issue universally binding standards on auditing, like the ones issued by the Institute by IFAC for financial audits. We know IFAC issues standards for financial audits. But ICS does not issue such internationally accepted standards, but it defines the benchmarks and the professional expectations for governance auditors in Kenya. So it's important for you to understand that the Institute of Certified Secretaries does not issue universally binding international standards on auditing, but it defines the benchmarks and expectations for governance auditors in Kenya through various ways. And one way is accreditation of governance auditors. Governance auditors. This is one of the major roles that the Institute plays. This is a key aspect of the Institute's influence. A key aspect of the Institute of Certified Secretaries' influence is its role in accrediting governance auditors. And this accreditation process ensures that individuals performing governance audits possess the necessary knowledge, skills, and ethical grounding to conduct such specialized assessments. And to be an accredited governance auditor, one typically needs to be a certified secretary, and one has to go to undergo specific training and examination provided by, in Kenya here, KASNEB. There is also training provided by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. So this accreditation signifies adherence to the Institute's prescribed standards for the profession. You understand? Yes. Then another aspect is the Code of Governance for private organizations in Kenya. Code organizations or companies in Kenya. Code of Governance for private organizations in Kenya. The Institute of Certified Secretaries has developed and also continues to champion the Code of Governance for private organizations in Kenya. And while its adoption is voluntary, the adoption of this code in these organizations, first of all, is voluntary. It's not mandatory. And while it is mandatory, the code sets out principles and best practices that guide private entities in establishing a robust governance structures. And a governance audit against this code would assess things like the board structure and composition. It will also address things like roles and responsibilities of the board. We have the ethical leadership and corporate culture, stakeholder engagement, transparency and disclosure, risk management framework, internal controls, and so on. So there are times when governance audits may be conducted for private organizations, and the criteria upon which such audits are performed is a code of governance for private organizations. Do you understand? And such a governance audit would assess the board structure and composition. By board structure and composition here, we are referring to the independent directors, their diversity, skills matrix, and so on. So the governance auditor will check if the board has diverse skills, diverse experience, diverse knowledge, and so on. The governance auditor would also assess the roles and responsibilities of the board, like strategy, like oversight, like risk management, internal controls, and so on. While assessing organizations based on this code, the governance auditor may also check the ethical leadership and corporate culture. He will assess the tone at the top, the code of conduct, and also whistleblower mechanisms. Another thing that is assessed using this code is the stakeholder engagement. How the organization interacts with and considers the interests of these various stakeholders like employees, customers, suppliers, and the community. So there are many aspects of this code, including internal controls, risk management, and so on. Number 3, candidates, we are studying governance and compliance audit standards by ICS, and we've seen that the ICS may not issue universally accepted standards, but it defines the benchmarks and professional expectations for governance auditors in Kenya through 1, accreditation of governance auditors. Number 2, through the code of conduct, through the code of governance for private organizations, and 3 is through influence on statutory codes. Influence statutory codes. Through influence on statutory codes and guidelines. What do I mean by that? Now, the ICS has been highly influential in the development and promotion of other major governance codes in Kenya, which then serve as the de facto governance audit procedures for specific types of entities. Like the CMA code was developed by the input of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, the CMA code. ICS was instrumental in the development of the Code of Corporate Governance Practices for Issuers of Securities to the Public. Do you understand? ICS was instrumental in the development of this code, which is legally binding for listed companies. This one is voluntary. Private organizations are not legally mandated to apply this code, but for the companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange are required to abide by the CMA code. This CMA code was developed, and ICS was instrumental in the development of the CMA code. You understand? Yes. Which is legally binding for listed companies. There is governance and audit standards. We are discussing here, candidates, the influence that the ICS has on statutory codes and guidelines. So the first code is the CMA code. Then we have governance and compliance. Governance and compliance audit standards. Okay? Governance audit standards. Governance audit standards. Now, the CMA code explicitly mandates listed companies to undergo an annual governance audit by a qualified and accredited governance auditor who is accredited by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. The audit assesses compliance with the principles and provisions of the code, which covers areas like board composition, ethics and integrity, transparency and disclosure. It also covers aspects like the shareholder rights and equitable treatment, including risk management and internal controls, and also stakeholder relationships. You understand? Yes. The Institute also candidates effectively sets the how to and what to look for the mandatory audits through its training, through accreditation and professional guidance. You understand? You understand, candidates? Yes. We are discussing the influence of the Institute on statutory codes and guidelines. Statutory codes and guidelines. Statutory codes and guidelines. Statutory codes and guidelines. So, we've so far looked at the accreditation of governance auditors, the code of governance for private organizations in Kenya. Then you have the influence on statutory codes. The first code is the CMA code. Then we have governance audit standards. Governance audit standards. We also mentioned the the CMA code explicitly mandates listed companies to undergo annual governance. And again, we also say that the audit the audit assesses compliance with the principles and provisions of the code. You understand? Yes. Then we have the Code of Governance for Corporations. Code that is the Mwongozo Code. It's called the Mwongozo Code in brief. Mwongozo Code. The Mwongozo Code. The Code of Governance for State Corporations. The Institute of Certified Secretaries collaborated with the State Corporations Advisory Council and the Public Service Commission in the formulation of the Mwongozo Code. So you see again, that is also another influence of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. It collaborated with other bodies to develop the Code of Governance for State Corporations. While Mwongozo primarily serves as a self-assessment and performance management tool, it also calls for periodic independent legal audits, which often encompass governance effectiveness. And auditors evaluating adherence to Mwongozo Code would rely on principles that are advocated by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. All right? Do you see the influence of the Institute? We are talking about the influence of the Institute. And we've said that the Institute may not issue universally accepted principles, but it has a lot of influence. Okay? We can move on and identify the general principles, general governance audit standards. General governance audit standards. General audit. We have the general governance audit standards, the general governance audit standards and guidelines by ICS. And guidelines by ICS. The general governance audit standards and guidelines by the ICS. We've seen that while ICS may not publish a single comprehensive standard document akin to the International Standards on Auditing for Financial Audits, its approach to governance audit standards is embedded in accreditation criteria. It is embedded in training, curricula. It is also embedded in professional guidance. It is embedded in ethics and professional conducts and so on. So you have the general governance audit standards and guidelines that are issued by ICS. So ICS issues general governance audit standards all right, and guidelines, which are embedded in a criteria. Of these general guidelines are embedded in accreditation criteria. For example, the requirements for becoming an accredited governance auditor reflect the expected level of competence and adherence to professional principles. We have also the training curriculum. It is embedded in the training curriculum. It's also embedded in training curriculum. The content of the ICS governance audit training programs outlines the methodologies, the scope, and key areas of assessment for governance audits. It is also embedded in professional guidance and publications. It's embedded in professional guidelines and publications. The Institute of Certified Secretaries publishes journals, publishes articles, and also guidelines that offer insights into best practices in corporate governance and the conduct of audits. The general standards, furthermore, are embedded in ethics and professional conduct. Professional ethics and professional conduct. ICS members, including governance auditors, are bound by a professional code of ethics that emphasizes independence, integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and professional competence. And these are fundamental principles of good audit. So that's all, candidates, you can say about governance and compliance audit standards by ICS. And it's important to remember that the Institute of Certified Secretaries, the Institute of Certified Secretaries standards, we are discussing standards by Institute of Certified Secretaries. It's important to remember and to note and to acknowledge that the Institute of Certified Secretaries governance standards, governance audits, okay? The ICS standards for governance audits in Kenya are not always found in a single numbered document. That's why we've not discussed any single document that is issued by ICS. The governance auditing standards by ICS, these standards are not contained in a single document. They are not to be found in a single numbered document. Instead, they are woven into its accreditation. They are woven into its accreditation. They are to, this institute is required to accredit governance auditors. So its standards are woven into the accreditation criteria, the accreditation framework. They are also woven into its influence on national governance codes. We have the national governance codes like the Code of Governance for Private Organizations in Kenya. This is a voluntary code. The Institute of Certified Secretaries played a pivotal role in the development of this code. There is the statutory code like the CMA code for the companies that are listed on the stock exchange. We have the Code of Governance for State Corporations, the Mwongozo Code. Together with other bodies, the ICS developed this Mwongozo Code. Do you understand? There is also its influence in the professional development program. So you've seen how the ICS publishes articles, journals, guidelines, professional journals, and so on. All right? National government codes, its professional development programs, and its general advocacy for good corporate governance practices. So an audit performed by an ICS accredited governance auditor is implicitly conducted to the highest professional and ethical standards upheld by the institute, because the institute provides guidelines on how these audits are to be conducted. The institute trains these governance auditors on how they're supposed to conduct these governance and compliance audits. So it's important for you to note that there is no single document go to when referring to the standards that are issued by ICS. Is that clear, candidates? Yes, that has to be clear. The Institute of Certified Secretaries in Kenya plays an important role in shaping governance and compliance audit standards, particularly for governance audits. It does not issue universally binding international standards like the one that is issued by the International Financial Accountants Committee, or the International Standards on Auditing for financial audits. But it defines the benchmarks and also the professional expectations for governance auditors in Kenya through 1, accreditation of governance auditor, through development, of course, of governance for private organizations, 3, through influence on statutory codes and guidelines, through number 4, code, development of the code of governance for state corporations, and 5, through the general governance auditing standards and guidelines as issued by the ICS. Thank you for attending the lesson. Bye-bye.